Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. I'm glad you're here today, and we are going to have an amazing conversation. Before we jump into the deep end, why don't you just give a quick overview of who you are so people know who they're listening to?
Sure. Josh Greco. I am a business coach. I left the corporate world about 5 years ago to pursue business coaching. I didn't even know what it was when I first discovered it and explored it. But it's a dream gig. I get to help people who want to develop themselves and their businesses and go to a higher level consciously. And in turn, that forces me to do the same for myself. So I feel like I've rigged the game and I'm winning every single day. I love it.
So how did you wind up where you are then? How'd you leave corporate to get there? So, because that's like, you said it, you weren't sure.
Yeah, I think like a lot of things that I desire, they come from a place of lack. So in the
Mm,
corporate world, I had always earned a good paycheck. I was in outside sales and business development, and I always did really well for myself across a couple different companies, a couple different industries. But there was something missing, and it took me the third company to realize, hey, this is a pattern. There's something that I'm missing here. What am I unfulfilled in, and how might I go about differently getting it? And that's what
mhm.
led me to discover coaching.
What was the thing that you were missing that you realized?
Alignment with a mission and a purpose. So
Mm,
I think what the other three companies had in common is that I really didn't care about logistics or trucking. I didn't really care about um, like construction work or facilities maintenance. I could develop myself and be good at those things and even earn a great living doing it. But if I wasn't tied to a purpose, or I didn't really
mhm.
see the intrinsic value or other people benefiting from it, um, that was something that was missing for me. So I feel like I have that alignment now with coaching.
Oh, that's great. How did you find that alignment then? How did you like you realized something was missing. How did you fall into coaching then? Because
Yeah, I
like,
think it was more just following the intuition. I had
okay.
a buddy of mine that I lived with in college, and we had always had these conversations about how businesses could be improved and how people on the front lines are unhappy with the work that they're doing, and they're just clocking in and clocking out, and they don't care about where they work. And yeah, led us to a conversation one day to discover that his fiance's uncle owns a business coaching firm. And he said,
Oh,
I
okay.
think you guys need to talk. So one thing led to another. And turns out he was best friends with the organization's CEO that I currently work for, Pro Advisor Coach. And I had a lunch meeting with him, and just I knew
And
that
then it was
that
from
was the
there.
place for me.
Yeah. I mean, you
Mhm.
just kind of know when it's the right move to make. There's that part of your soul that goes, "Oh, wait a minute. I'm really aligned with that." Scared crapless to do it, but excited at the same time. I love that.
Exactly.
And you probably know this too, that fear and excitement are the same side of the same coin. Like they're the same coin, just flip it around, So when you're afraid of something, it's like, "Oh, wait a minute. I'm going to turn this into excitement." So
Oh yeah.
in your coaching that you do you find um, a lot of people that you coach, or do you find clients that are not in alignment with what they're doing, and how you help them that way is, um, or do you have like what's your typical client
Yeah.
like?
It's funny because it's developed and changed so much in the last 5 years. I'd say
Okay.
most recently, what it's developed into is helping my clients navigate their ego and their egoic projections. Something 5 years ago I never would have known about or known how to do it, but that's been my mission in the last year or two, is to become conscious of my unconscious saboteurs, if you will.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've become aware of this whole unseen world and how to navigate it, and I think it's causing a lot of problems with people who perceive that there are problems externally, when really it's just their own internal projections that are manifesting in real life. And
Mhm.
so yeah, I coach and teach people how to navigate those things.
You threw out a couple of words that are thrown around often. One is ego and ego projections. How do you define ego? And then I've never heard the term ego projections. So if you want to unpack what that
Yeah,
means.
Sure. So there's probably several different definitions. The one that I like to go by. So first thing to realize is that ego is, there's no solid structure. You can't point to it. It's not a tangible thing. So it's an invisible thing. And what this invisible thing does is try to keep you safe. And what I mean by that is whenever there's something that you might fear, or if you're going into a situation where safety is of concern or your survival might be a threat, then what your ego does is like the program kicks in and it goes online. This is hard for people to realize because it's all unconscious. It's an unintelligent form, meaning it doesn't learn things. It just acts the way that it knows how, based
Mm.
on a program that it learns when usually there's some form of trauma that kicks it off.
Yeah. Okay. Wait a minute. I want to pause. I don't mean to interrupt you. I want to pause you
Sure.
right there a
Yeah.
minute because I used to hear ego thrown around as a negative. Oh, he's
Mm,
got a big ego. Like somebody would say that. But the way you're defining it, it's just that part of us that operates subconsciously that tries to keep us safe, which to
yes.
me is different than the, oh, he has a really big, massive ego. So how would you like
Yeah.
do you know where I'm
That
going with
that
that?
more oh yeah, that more popular definition or way that people might associate with the ego, I would say, is an offshoot of that. So somebody might have a big
Okay.
ego because they're protecting something, or their ego is kicking in because that person might be
Oh.
vulnerable. So if they have a big ego, they're protecting you from seeing a more vulnerable side of them.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Okay. That makes more sense now. Because
Yes.
every once in a while, so my coach, who I adore, but he is a realistic two by four to me, every once in a while, has said to me, Sue, you have a massive ego. And I never really understood what he meant.
Mm,
And I was like, I thought of it a different way. Now, the way you just explained that, it's like, yeah, my massive ego is trying to massively protect me from doing things that I know I should do, but they're really, really scary and they're outside of my
yes.
comfort zone. So that's where the massive ego comes in at.
Yes. And a way
Wow,
to
that is just that just yeah, it just blows my mind right there. I hope anybody listening also has that that aha moment that, "Oh, wait a minute, that ego isn't such a bad thing to have. It's there for a reason." All right, so now that we've got it, we've got ego projections. That ego is trying to keep us safe. How do we shut it up when we do we
Yeah.
shut it up, or how do we keep it from sabotaging those things that we know we should do but don't want to because it's trying to keep us safe.
Yes. Great question. Um, I liked your frame in the beginning of like, I thought the ego was a bad thing. And for so long, I felt that way. It's just, like I said, it's an unintelligent program. So in a way, it's showing us what is next to address or what's next to heal.
Mm,
So it's the identification of it or the awareness of it that will make that program disintegrate. So it needs to be unconscious. So as you become conscious of what's happening, it will stop affecting your life in a negative way. And I have
mm,
examples of how we might identify that. So usually it comes into play or into your consciousness by way of thought or thinking in your head. When we're not in our ego, we're in our heart. We're acting with our intuition and just doing out of a place of love, out of a place of passion for ourselves. Inevitably, when those thoughts come in, just listen to the story that the ego is telling you, and that's your hint for what you need to address in your ego.
mm. Okay. Let's go for an example on that.
Okay.
Let's do that. So, because I'm trying to draw the connection between the heart and then the ego kicking in and what that might look like practically. Because we could talk about it, theoretically, but until
Yeah.
you until you put it into the practical, I'm having trouble seeing it. So
Sure.
how would you walk somebody like me through it, seeing it? And feel free to unpack me if you'd like. I'm
Sure. Yeah.
uh, it's not a
So
problem.
I might pick something that we have in common. So coaching, for example, I experienced this early on in my coaching career. I really wanted a quote unquote book of business. And so I would get very frustrated when I would quote unquote pitch or connect with prospects and we wouldn't make deals or they wouldn't have the budget to pay for coaching. And so these stories started to come up with I'm not a good enough coach.
Mm,
do not rub shoulders with, or I do not have the network for people who can't afford coaching. And all these narratives, they feel really true. They feel like, oh yeah, there's evidence for that. I believe that. And all that's doing is protecting me from taking bigger steps or having the confidence to keep going with other prospects. And what's happening is, until I address that, this is where the projectionism comes in. I'm projecting my own fear of having a big book of business. Like, what if I got that? Would I be able to handle it? And so I had to address that. And until I did, what I was doing was my ego was projecting other people saying no to me, or had limitations in their own finances, and they wouldn't commit to coaching until I addressed that. So that's how the projection works, is I have a fear, and until I address that, my external world is mirroring back to me all these people who, for whatever reason, could not afford the coaching or didn't want to commit with me. And so instead of going to the program of, well, they're right, or like, I shouldn't be doing this, it led me to believe, well, why is that program running? What is it trying to protect me from? And it was actually the fear of success, of actually succeeding and having, 20 clients a week. Like, how would I be able to handle that? So there's all these fears beyond what was actually happening. And until I addressed that, it just kept happening.
Oh, okay. So you have to, it's almost like digging deeper, isn't it? It's like peeling off the layers of an onion and then just keep asking yourself why. Why am I experiencing that? And then go another layer deeper. Why am I experiencing that? Then another one deeper. And then once you looked at success and realized, oh, that's what was stopping you, and there was a fear of success there. How did you overcome your fear of success then?
Yeah, so I did a lot of visualization at that point of what it would look like. It was almost like I had to catapult myself forward into that setting, that scenario, almost as if it were happening right now. And
Mhm.
what did I feel? Did I feel like I should feel bliss, right? If it were perfect for me. And that would also tell me I would have it right then if those were the feelings. But there was other resistance that came in. So just
Hmm.
picking those out one by one. What did I feel strange about, or what did I feel fearful about, or what didn't feel great to me in my body? My body would tell me. I'd feel, fluttery in my chest, or my tummy would feel heavy. And so, like, the body is all interactive with all these games that are being played, and we have learned to turn off our awareness of our body so often, but it keeps so many secrets hidden unless we tune into those things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You said something that really struck me, and that was our body is not in touch with what's going on. And I had another podcast guest not too long ago, and we were talking about that same thing, how you just turn off what's going on and you don't listen. And through, like you said, visualization, there's meditation, there's other things you can do to quiet yourself down
Mm.
and, find out what's underneath there. As you were talking, I thought to myself, "Man, he's just coaching himself." So, I would just put a plug in for coaching. If you're having a tough time getting out of your own way, then having
Mm.
somebody who's outside of you, who's not invested or maybe not even know you that well, that's where coaching comes in and helps. It is, if you have the right coach, having the right coach to see what you need to see and to know why you're going to coaching in the first place. Another question I was thinking as you were talking is, how can you differentiate between the ego and imposter syndrome?
Mm.
Because it sounds a little bit, I don't know, to me, they sound like they're almost the same thing sometimes, where I heard you say one of the, statements that the ego was saying to you was, "Maybe I'm not gonna be a good coach. Maybe I'm not qualified to be a good coach." And it almost sounds like imposter syndrome. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I believe that imposter syndrome is a program of the ego.
Mm,
And so what is being told to us is that we need the evidence first before we believe in it. So if I were to say I had the imposter syndrome of being a CEO or running an organization, say I ran the organization for 6 months, I probably wouldn't have the imposter syndrome anymore because I have the proof of it. So what
okay.
imposter syndrome is begging for is, like, we need the evidence. We want to see it first. And so I might pose the question, can you feel it first before you experience it? It's a little bit of a shout out to Joe Dispenza and some of his beliefs there of changing the pattern or getting out of the pattern. Like, what needs to happen first? It's a very slow process to get evidence first before we believe things to be true about ourselves, but it's quite another thing to believe something is true and then draw it towards us and then have the evidence and then just have more things backing up what we already believed before we started that experience.
That's harder. Don't you think that's harder to believe in it and then pull that belief forward to yourself than
I
it
think
is
I think
to
it's easier.
Oh, really?
It
Okay.
takes practice. It's not going to be easy in the beginning, but what you're doing is pulling out all of the things you'll be pulling out anyway if you were to wait until you had the experience. So
Okay.
say
Fair enough.
within week 2 of being a CEO, you have these challenges on your plate, right? Well, this is what I was being the imposter for. Well, this is why the imposter syndrome was coming up. I don't know how to handle these things. Well, guess what? The
Oh,
only
okay.
way that you know how to handle them is to be put into that experience. And so are you going to wait till you have that experience to believe that you can handle them? Because you probably will navigate them. You'll probably handle it in
Right.
some way, shape, or form. You'll reach out to your mentors. You'll figure it out some way, in your like by reaching into your bag of tricks, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah.
And that's how you learn, right? But I think addressing what will eventually come up anyway ahead of time is a way to like get ahead of the game and to draw it towards you in a more a quicker way.
Yeah, you know what? That seems to make more sense now because if you wait for that thing to happen or you only permit yourself to move forward if that thing were happening, then maybe you might not do that thing in the first place.
Exactly.
So, pulling yourself forward and be like, "Okay, yeah, that makes sense." What are some tools that you use to help yourself evaluate clients so that you can get beneath the layer, start peeling off those layers of the onion and
Mm.
help somebody overcome what the ego is, holding them back from?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you mentioned like a shout out to coaching earlier of just navigating these things. I think we can do it ourselves. It's just we typically don't hold the space or ask ourselves questions because we don't maybe want to sound crazy or dialogue with ourselves, right? We can go back and forth and figure these things out. But what
Yeah.
coaching does is hold the space for these more important questions or considerations to come through. And there's several ways to just asking questions, right, is a way to become enlightened on what somebody is going through. And I also mentioned I have access to an assessment that I think is really, really valuable through Pro Advisor Coach that we call the Mind Scan assessment. And I'm super excited to share more. I want to offer this to your listeners, but I can also I also want to describe what it is. So how might I? What's the best way to do that, Sue? Because I know that you've taken it and you've
Yeah.
experienced it yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I have. It was really cool. The results were just like, it didn't take that long. First, that was the first thing. It didn't take that long. But when I got the results back, I was like, holy smokes. It was uncanny how accurate it was.
Yeah,
So you're welcome to go into like what was in my mind scan because, my mind anybody's mind's fascinating, but
yeah.
you're welcome to talk about it from that perspective. So I'll throw it back to you, Josh. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go?
Yes. So let me just maybe lay out what it is. I think there's tons of other assessments out there on the market, and how this one might
Sure.
differentiate itself is that it's based on mathematical algorithms, and it's not necessarily a personality assessment. It's more to measure what we value in our thinking at an unconscious level. So it kind of goes along with the ego conversation, right? But
Mhm.
it gives a structure to how you might understand your thoughts. And when I first took it, I just thought that was so enlightening for me. So think of it like this: there's dozens, if not hundreds, maybe even thousands of different shades of color in the world, right? But they're all derived from three primary colors. So it's been said that we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 65,000 thoughts every single day.
Mhm.
And the person who created this assessment, his theory was that we can categorize each one of those thoughts into three pillars of thinking. So right there, it's just a way to categorize and to navigate and to think about how your thinking is working. And so those three pillars are what Dr. Robert Hartman has called relator, doer, and thinker. And when you think of business, I use this for my clients and in business, we can't really have a thought that is not related in some way, shape, or form to one of these three pillars, if not more, if not two at the same time. So the relator is our connectivity to others and to ourselves. It's the intrinsic value of doing business. It's the connection to others. The doer is what he calls the extrinsic value. It's the getting results. It's the taking actions, getting things done. And then the thinker is the systemic or the process, procedure, rules, all the systems in place for business. So think of business is making relationships and connectivity and understanding people's needs. It's solving problems and offering them a product that they'll buy so that their lives will be improved. And then it's systematically scaling that, or coming up with systems, processes, job descriptions, roles, so that people can be successful in what they're doing. And so we use these three pillars all the time, in a very integrated way. But what this mind scan does is produce results on what you're paying attention to. So you're probably paying attention to one of those three pillars more than the others. If you're a high relator, that is what you're focused on. But then it shows you how, if you're a high relator, maybe you're putting the value of the doer dimension on the back burner. Maybe you more heavily weigh what could go wrong with taking an action, or why you might hesitate to take an action. And then, so if you're prioritizing one, you can't prioritize all three of them. So something else is taking the back seat. And then the second measurement is the clarity, or how well you see in those dimensions. So you could have some super tunnel vision going on, or you could see the forest for the trees, and there's both strengths and weaknesses to either one of those things. So I said a lot there. Let me just pause and see if that makes sense.
No, that's okay. No, I mean, it does. So you have those three areas. You have the relator, the doer, and the thinker. And you said that you can't be high, or you can't operate fully in all of them. And so what one's a strength, the other could be a weakness. Is there a way to, okay, well, let's take me for example. I think if I remember correctly, I was a very high relator. Um, and then I think I can't remember what the lower one was. I think it was a doer, if I'm not mistaken. That doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right. I know I was a high thinker. Well, I know one of the weaknesses was that I have that almost analysis paralysis, where I just analyze and analyze and analyze and then not go into action. So how would somebody, and I know this is not unique to me. I know there's a lot of people out there that have that, just they know what they're supposed to do. They have that analysis paralysis and they don't move forward. So
Yes.
how does the mind scan help somebody who's in that situation? How do you coach them through that to get them out of their comfort zone and move into action when that's not what they might not be, most comfortable with?
Sure. Yeah, and you nailed it. You led with your empathy, right? The relator. So what
Right.
that says is, for Sue to feel good, all the people around her need to be good. You're going to constantly be checking in, and you're an integrator, right? You're a
Right.
connector. That's who you are. That's what you do. So that is where you prefer to spend your time. That's where your vision goes, or where your thinking goes, when you're either making a big decision, or when you're navigating something. And so what
Yes.
you're mentioning about the doer, so you actually had a really high clarity, but it was towards the bottom of the scale. So what does that mean? That means you can see very well all the practical ways to get things done, all the options that you have for solving a problem or coming up with a solution. And it's near the bottom, meaning you're maybe discounting some of the positive things that can come from taking action. So instead of taking
Makes
action right
sense.
away, you're concerned with what could go wrong. If I do this,
Yeah,
how might this be a bad thing?
100%.
Now, the strengths and
100%.
weaknesses come in here with, maybe that's a strength of yours. If you're a C-level employee, you don't want to make action steps like just off the whim. You want to
Right.
be able to consult your people, that's the relator, and maybe even have some systems in place, schedule some meetings with some key people, and you'll arrive at a solution or an action that is right for you. Now, to your question, if people want to work on this, what I do is I tie this into what people are wanting in their lives. So I usually start out
Mm.
with, paint that ideal picture of the future. Where are we going? And then what might prevent you from there? So if you have a place in your future that requires you to take a lot of action and you're a low doer, then it opens up that conversation. Like, how do we navigate this here? First of all,
Yeah.
why is that a pattern in your life? There's usually something that has happened that has made it valuable to you to be a low doer, to be cautious. And then if we overcome that, if we lean into that doer a little bit, if we take action without all the things that you normally want to have set before taking that action, how would that feel to you? And then we start to navigate some of those feelings, and maybe the ego is involved in there too. We kind of address that. trying to protect you, of
It
course.
sounds like what you do is more like it's not just coaching, it's like coaching and therapy. Do you ever feel like a therapist sometimes too? Where
Sometimes
you
I say
have
I'm a business therapist. Yeah,
a
yeah.
business therapist. I like that. You just keep peeling that stuff off there. I mean, at least that was my experience with my coach. He's the first coach that I've had. I'm sure I will have many more over the career that I'm going to start to build for myself because, coaching takes on different forms for different seasons, right? So
Yeah.
let's talk about that a minute. What are your thoughts on that? Where coaching, like, what does that look like, or how do you feel about that? Different coaches for different seasons.
Yeah. First of all, I just love coaching because, like we've kind of been saying, it just holds that space to have these conversations for really important
Sure.
things. And I think it's a 1% thing. You can maybe ask the average person who's an employee at a company what they think of coaching. They probably have never heard of it before. And so it's for, sometimes coaching gets the stigma that it's for people who need help. And I tend to think it's for the high achievers who also want, they know that there's more to achieve in their life. And I don't say achievement like money or revenue, although it could be those things, but a lot of the coaching I do is for fulfillment and happiness, and to understand how to navigate and how to achieve those things, how to do well in business, but also be happy at the same time. So to your point, I think we go through things in life where things come and go, right? A challenge that we might experience in a year or over a year's time is certainly not the same challenge we might experience 5 years down the road. So there's
Sure.
coaches who specialize in different types of challenges, or coaching people how to navigate certain things. So you might, I don't, I'm just a little leery of using this word, but like outgrow a coach. I don't mean like you don't have a need for them
Right.
anymore, but maybe the services that they're an expertise for, it might be better for you to seek out another coach that will help you as
Yeah,
an
that
expert
makes
in the next
sense.
thing that you're looking to tackle.
Yeah, 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 that makes sense. That makes sense. What was something that you thought would be hard about coaching, but really turns out it wasn't? And then flip it around. What did you think would be easy
Oh,
and wound up being more challenging for you?
great question. Hard was, I maybe have a younger face in the coaching industry than if somebody says a coach or a business coach, you might think of somebody else, somebody who might have a little bit more experience in the coaching world. So my original belief system that I had to overcome in the first year or so of coaching is, what 55-year-old business owner is going to listen to 35-year-old me that has, half the amount of experience there. So
Mm,
that became easier because I realized it was just a belief system there.
mm,
So I'm not here to offer value because I know more about your business than you do, but I know the principles of growth and development, and I can see things in other people that even if they have more experience in business, I can help them navigate and grow themselves. And so
mm.
that became easier for me. So that's kind of a catch 22 there. It wasn't easy in the beginning, but it became easier for me. And then vice versa. Let's see here. That's something that I thought it'd be easy to build a book of business, that I have value. I'm a coach. This is my dream gig. And like when I tell people, they'll just line up for me, and I'll have clients, lining up out the door. It's just not the case. It can be difficult to grow your practice because there's so much growth that's needing to be happened, personally and professionally myself, which is why, like I let off with that, right? Like I feel like I've rigged the game because I've done so much development myself. The more I develop, the more
Yeah.
I feel like I'm able to offer my clients and prospects.
Yeah, yeah. My coach and I have talked often that, he doesn't just coach me to help me, but it also goes the other way around. He becomes a better person and a better coach through coaching me. And I become a better coach or better person because he coached me. So it's kind of like
100%.
this. If you approach it from this cyclical perspective where both people are growing. It's not a expert and somebody who doesn't know anything. It's more of a growth cycle. Although there are places for mentors, but and there's a place for mentors, and they have a special purpose as well, where they are the expert, and that's why you go to them as a mentor. But that's why they're called mentors and not necessarily coaches. And coaches are, are coaches.
Right.
How long? I was curious. How long did it take you to build your book of business then?
Within probably 2.5 years,
Yeah.
the coaching pace that I was on eclipsed my highest business development year, my highest sales year. So it took me
Oh,
maybe
congrats.
2.5 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I, I
Two.
attribute,
Yeah.
yeah, I attribute that a lot to the Pro Advisor Coach and the organization that I'm with. It accelerated my growth as a coach. I was in a
Yeah.
community of other coaches. I had access to resources and a platform that I thought was really useful. But yeah, probably about two and a
Yeah.
half years. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever heard the saying, it takes 10 years to be an overnight success?
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's the same thing, and how many people give up in the first 6 months? "Oh, I don't have," "I'm gonna be a coach," which is a hard business to go into, although there's stuff out there that touts be a coach overnight, and the clients will just, they'll just find you, and they'll fall in your lap, and everything will be great, and put ten Instagram reels out, and, you'll be an overnight success, but we forget that there's a grind behind it, and I think we talked about before too, about finding your passion and
Mm,
what drives you. Because when something gets hard, if you don't have that really big why behind it, and it's not just money, it's got to be something bigger than money to
yeah.
drive you, then when it gets hard, you're just going to say, "Pff, baloney on it.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to go there. What's
Hmm.
something that very few people agree with you on?
Oh, great question. Um, I have become obsessed with understanding frequencies, and I have a hesitation to go to doctors or participate in the pharmaceutical industry because they're all external solutions to something internally that's going on within me. So I have a belief that if I feel a certain type of way, or that diseases come from my own doing, versus what a lot of people think and see is that they have evidence for the external. So that might be something that not everybody is on board with yet, but I think there's tons of technology and research and even science behind frequency and healing modalities in terms of visualization or sound or anything else that comes in the form of a frequency, which is everything in our universe. So that might
Right.
be something
Right.
that not everybody agrees with me on.
I agree with you on because I believe that as well. When you radiate, when you are a positive person, you radiate at that higher frequency, and you are, then people around you, it starts rubbing off on them, and they feel that. And then when you're depressed, or you're angry, or you're sad, or confused, that's a lower frequency. And if people listening to that going like, that's woo woo crap, it's like, just sit there for a few minutes. And when you're around somebody, think of somebody that you love to be around.
Hmm.
Probably they're smiling all the time, and probably they're bubbly and happy. And so they're resonating that thing that you want. And that's that frequency that you can't see, but there's science to back that stuff up too. So it's not just all woo woo anymore. And, the same thing with the negative frequencies too. So yeah, I've heard that before too, that a lot of the diseases come from within. It's
Hmm.
not just, I would take it, I don't know if say I take it one step further. I believe that as well. I believe we can heal ourselves naturally, but then there's every once in a while where, you got to get that medical intervention or you die, so it's
Mm,
like for some of it, my appendix burst. There's no amount of will
right.
within me that's going to heal my appendix. I'm going to have to go get something done with that. So I always like to add that as a, like just that caveat in there. But there are a lot of other things that we can do for ourselves. I have a question for you then.
Sure.
Why do you think people, given your thought process on, people, we can heal ourselves and frequencies, why do you think people default to pharmaceutical intervention first versus trying to heal themselves naturally?
Programming. It's the way that we know. It's when we first got sick as a child, what did we do? We went to the doctor, and we prescribed some
Mm,
medication. So, and it
mhm.
helped us, right? It was, there was some sort of healing factor that occurred. So we had the evidence for it. So all of a sudden, we've been programmed to believe that that's what we should be doing. Now, it's not that to say that we shouldn't be doing that, but just that there are other options. There's other ways to do that depending on the environment that you grew up.
Mhm.
If you grew up in a holistic environment and you get sick, maybe there's a different parent that treats that differently and doesn't go to a doctor and uses natural herbs or remedies to solve that. So that person's not going to be programmed to seek out a doctor or the pharmaceutical industry to solve their problem.
Do you think another explanation might be that it's just easier? It's just easy to take a pill and make that thing
Yeah.
go away rather than trying to heal yourself naturally. For example, like inflammation. Let's take
Hmm.
inflammation. I'm a runner and I was experiencing inflammation for a little while. I couldn't figure out what it was. And I started taking cold showers. Now,
Mm.
as soon as you say that, and somebody who's never taken a cold shower, and you say you take cold showers, they're like, "Oh, you're never going to get me to do that." But there's a protocol. You can. I never took cold showers before too, but you know what? It eased the inflammation, and what I had
Mm.
going on in my body disappeared. So
Mm.
I could have taken pills to take care of that, but I went after the, let's try the cold showers and see if that works with the inflammation. It did. It wasn't in it. I'll admit, it was not easy at first. But you start with a warm shower. For anybody listening is like, she's got to be out of her mind taking cold showers. I start with a warm shower. I do everything I need to do with the shower, but then I start turning the dial to
Same.
cold,
Yeah.
right? And then and I did it gradually too. It was like 15 seconds the first week, 30 seconds the next week.
Yeah.
Now I'm up to 2 minutes and you don't even think about it. So it's just gradually working yourself into that.
Yes. And I'm the same way. When I say take a cold shower, I usually don't take the whole shower like that, right?
Yeah.
It's just at
Yeah,
the
yeah,
end.
yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
just at the
Hmm.
end and that's, that that helps.
Right.
Hey Josh, I like to ask my guests the same three questions and one of them I love the most, but we'll start with the low level one first. What's a book or resource that's had a
Mm.
significant impact on you?
I think I was prepared for this question because I have a book nearby here that I can hold up. But this book had a big impact on me. It's called The Tools. See that
Mm.
okay? And
Mhm.
it's by Phil Stutz and Barry Michaels, I think is how
Oh,
you say
love Phil
Barry's last
Stutz.
name. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I came across this book by way of the Netflix documentary that Jonah Hill made of his, I believe he's a
Mhm.
therapist, is officially his title, but Phil Stutz, and just some of his approaches to handling and dealing with trauma and pain and certain situations in your life. And I watched the documentary and I watched it again the next day because it was so impactful for me. And I realized he had this book, and there's even a website that I'll plug a little bit. It's called thetoolsbook.com to navigate some of these ego projections. It's all kind of related. So The Tools is an incredible book, and the website's amazing, and so is the documentary.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, he is referenced a lot by Brian Johnson of Heroic.
Oh, okay.
He was yeah, he is, I think he still is Brian Johnson's coach, and so I'm part of the
Hmm.
Heroic coaching program, and he references the books that Phil has written, and I've heard of the tools before,
Oh,
so
yeah.
there's it's a lot of cool stuff there. The second question is a Pandora's box, but I love it, so I still ask it. What's one question or topic you wish I would have asked about, and how would you have answered that question or expanded on the topic?
Hmm. Um, Maybe a question about what's key or different for successful people. What do successful people do or have that other people don't? And
Okay,
there's
go ahead and
a
answer
great
it.
a great quote that I'm sure you and your listeners have probably heard, but that we don't rise to the level of our goals. Typically, we fall to the level of our routines. And
Mm,
I think if you look at any successful person, they're very routine oriented. Not that they're stuck in their patterns; they're aware of their routines, right? So they might get up at early and do a miracle morning routine. I don't know if that's another great book out there, Miracle
oh,
Morning.
yeah, yeah,
Basically, just saying that you get the mind going in different creative ways that speak to you in the morning before anybody else is even up or operating, or you're looking at emails, that we're so distracted every single day from all these other commitments that we have and people pulling us in different directions. So there's you can institute or implement a routine to prioritize what's most important and make progress every single day in a number of different avenues: reading, writing, meditation, stretching, exercising, whatever you feel like you don't have time for if you just wake up and you go to work and you come home and you eat dinner and you go to bed. So what I would say is the difference between successful people and people who want to be successful is that they've instituted or implemented some sort of routine daily that they get to exercise these quote unquote muscles of all those different categories.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, yeah. I love the Miracle Morning. That actually started my journey for me. About
Aha.
2.5 years ago, I found that book and I was like, I needed to do, how sometimes you have that urge in life where you know that something has to change. You just don't know what it is. So you'll take the first thing that comes at you.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, Miracle Morning fell in my lap. And I can't remember even where it came from. I think it was, oh, Miracle Morning for Millionaires. That was the
Yep.
first Miracle Morning I read. And I was
Yep.
like, well, if I want to be a millionaire, maybe I ought to start doing a Miracle Morning like millionaires do.
Yeah.
But it was a great book for, like you said, for establishing routines. And if somebody needs a place to start, that first small step, all of those books. And he's got a ton of them too. He's got the Miracle Morning. I
Yep.
think he just revised it. And then he's got Miracle Morning for entrepreneurs, for teachers, for real estate people, for kids, for
Yeah.
teens. Oh, yeah. It just took off on a tangent, which is great then because it just, helps everybody out there, like, especially if you want to get something that's specific. So, Josh,
Bingo.
as we close, what is one small step that someone can do today that's going to help them change their tomorrow?
hmm Ooh, maybe shameless plug here. I'd like to be able to offer that mind scan assessment for anybody who's listening or watching that
Yeah.
is intrigued by this. So the small step would be to click on that link. I'd love to share the link with you, and just maybe you can share it in the show notes or wherever you
I
might
will.
put it. Yeah, and they're welcome to just take it. Like you mentioned, it's pretty quick and easy and painless. It's two sets of 18 different statements that you just rank in order from what you perceive to be good to bad or best to worst. And like don't hesitate, because it has this really intuitive information, and I'm going to offer a free review of your results together for whoever completes that. So that would be a good small step that people can take today.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if they're not a business person, they can
Correct.
still reach out to you. So anybody can do this. That's
Anybody
awesome. Thanks.
who is intrigued by thoughts and thinking and wants
Yeah.
to understand how their thinking is affecting their lives, and is driven to take the next step in their own awareness. I would love to meet with
Gosh,
those
that's
people.
awesome. That's awesome that you have that. And you know what? I gained a lot out of it. We had a conversation, I guess, what was it, last week?
Mhm.
We talked for a good, I can't remember if it was hour, half an hour. It was a great conversation. And you took the results from that mind scan and then we unpacked it as well, which I appreciated. And it was more insightful for me than just reading it.
Mm.
So my point would be, yes, you can read the results. You can take all these tests and read the results, but if you have an expert to help you decipher what it is that you're reading, you'll get so much more out of the test, regardless of what it is. And I can say I got more out of it by interacting with you over what my results were versus just reading my results. So for that, I appreciate it. Josh, how can people find you?
Joshua at proadvicecoach.com is the email. I can also leave, I'll leave the website that I have is joshuargreco.com. And then we also have a website for ProAdvisor Coach, proadvisorcoach.com. And then for somebody who might be watching that is maybe intrigued by becoming a coach, we have a version of our ProAdvisor Coach website for new coaches that's called proadvisor.coach. So I welcome people to
Hmm.
visit that site. And there's success stories and coaches in our organization that have answered questions and done testimonials. So you might be curious about that as well.
Perfect. All right, great. Thank you. Well, Josh, thank you for the gift of your time. I appreciate you. This was a lot of
Dude,
fun.
thank you. Is there any questions that maybe I should have asked you, or anything that you would like to share or add before we depart here?
I can't
Put
think of one. I
the
mean, if
host
you
on the
have
spot a
something,
little bit.
yeah, you put me on the spot. I'm usually the one asking the questions. It gets, it creates that high level of anxiety sometimes when the guest swaps it on me and then asks me the question, because then I can't tell, like, are you really asking me the question, or or are you just theoretically asking the question, or do you really want to know my answer? So I'll throw back at you. Is there something you wanted to ask me that I didn't say
Uh,
or answer?
yeah, why don't we? I like the idea of this. Why don't we share something that we're each grateful for today? That's how I'd like to depart, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Do you want me to go first or you want to
Yeah,
go first?
sure. Go ahead.
Something that I am grateful for today. Wow. So I write the three things that I'm grateful for every evening. And
Oh,
then I always say why I am grateful for them. The first thing, and I've got a list of them, but I'm going to pick the first thing that comes to my mind. I am grateful that I got an opportunity to go travel to Austin, Texas. And why is because out of that trip, I didn't expect it, but I wound up with a job offer. So I'm
Mm.
extremely grateful for that because it is a tremendous, amazing opportunity that fell in my lap. So I am very grateful. I'm grateful because I took a chance and I put myself out there and did something scary that maybe somebody else might not have done, and that it just started and produced some really interesting results. So that I
Wow,
am grateful for today.
that's amazing.
How about you?
I am grateful for a recent challenging situation I've come across that has caused me to change my morning routine. So today was day number one of my new morning routine, and I'm just grateful. I felt so much more prepared and present, even for this podcast recording, because of that
Ah,
routine. So that's what I'm grateful for.
wow. What was the one thing you changed?
Just taking more time. So I found that I was rushing and trying to fit too many things in. So I had a lot more time to be present and almost kind of go where I needed to go. I had a way kind of miracle morning esque of how I wanted to navigate, but I gave myself enough space to kind of go where I needed to go. So today was more meditation time, and I just needed to sit and be present. And sometimes that feels good, other than like do, go, go, go. So I was just
Yeah.
more present, and I feel that even in this conversation here.
Thanks.
Thank you for this opportunity, Sue. It's always great to connect with another coach and to
Same.
navigate some of these topics here. So I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
same. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Until next time, love yourself, then love others. Peace.